Victoria James stood outside the wedding hall, clutching an invitation that never should have existed. Inside, the man she loved was marrying another woman, not because he didn't love her once, but because she was fat, broke, and black. Earlier that morning, Patrick Marcus had looked her in the eyes and said, "I can't marry you. My career needs someone presentable." The room had laughed. Her heart didn't just break, it was humiliated in public. So she ran. 6 hours later, Victoria landed in Seoul with one suitcase, an empty bank account, and a body the world had taught her to hate. She thought distance would save her. She was wrong. Because the moment she struggled with her bag at the airport, 3 men in black suits stopped walking. People moved out of their way. One of them stepped forward, tall, calm, dangerous. He said her name without asking. "Victoria James," he said softly. "You don't belong alone tonight. Come with us." She didn't know it yet, but the Korean Mafia bosses had just taken her home. Before the story continues, let me say this. If you're still here right now, it means this story touched you. And Love and Tension is built for people like you, people who feel deeply, who believe love should hurt, heal, and change lives. More than 99% of viewers watch but never subscribe. That means every time you enjoy a story like this, there's a chance you'll never see the next one. So if these stories comfort you, entertain you, or make you feel understood, please subscribe. It's free, but it means everything to this channel. Now, let's continue. Kang Ji-won stood in the shadows of the private lounge overlooking Incheon Airport's VIP terminal. His posture relaxed yet alert, hands clasped behind his back, sharp eyes analyzing the crowd streaming through customs long before his scheduled departure was announced. Then, his gaze found her. She entered almost apologetically, a beacon of deep brown skin in a sea of pale uniformity. Her oversized sweater, wrinkled from the flight, hung loosely over jeans that had seen better days. Her natural hair, thick and beautiful, was pulled into a hasty bun. She carried her head high despite the weight pressing down on her shoulders, despite the tears she'd clearly been crying for hours. Ji-won's eyes narrowed. She was struggling not to stumble under the weight of her luggage, struggling not to make eye contact with anyone, struggling not to let the world see just how broken she was. He could read it all. Behind him, Min Seo shifted. "Hyung, our car is ready." Ji-won didn't move. "Who is she?" Their tech specialist, Dae-hyun, was already on his phone, fingers flying. Victoria James, American, 28, arrived on a one-way ticket purchased 4 hours before departure. No hotel reservation, bank account shows practically nothing. "Why is she here?" Ji-won murmured, still watching as Victoria struggled with her suitcase, the handle broken and catching on the polished floor. Dae-hyun's expression shifted. "Social media shows, a wedding, this morning, Boston. The groom, Patrick Marcus, posted photos, different bride. There are comments, lots of them, about how he upgraded." The silence that followed was cold. "She ran," Min Seo said quietly. "She flew halfway around the world to escape," Ji-won corrected. His jaw tightened as he watched Victoria finally give up on the suitcase handle and simply drag the bag behind her, leaving a faint trail on the immaculate floor. "Not our concern, Hyung," Dae-hyun said carefully. But Ji-won was already moving towards the stairs. Victoria's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold her phone. The screen was cracked. She'd thrown it against the hotel wall back in Boston before remembering she couldn't afford to replace it, and the battery was at 3%. She had no plan, no reservation, no idea what she was doing in Seoul, except that it was far from Boston, far from Patrick, far from the pitying looks and the viral photos of her humiliation. Patrick Marcus weds marketing executive Amanda Chen in elegant Boston ceremony. Not Victoria. Never Victoria. Her suitcase handle snapped completely, and she let out a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. Of course this would happen now. Miss James. The voice was smooth, accented, and far too close. Victoria spun around and nearly fell backward. 3 men stood behind her, and they absolutely did not belong in an airport terminal. They belonged on magazine covers, in action movies, in worlds that didn't include broken suitcases and broken hearts. The one who'd spoken stepped forward, tall, broad-shouldered, wrapped in a perfectly tailored black coat that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. Mid-30s, maybe. His presence commanded the space around him. His jawline was sharp enough to cut, his dark eyes intense and impossibly focused on her. "How do you know my name?" Victoria's voice came out smaller than she'd intended. "We make it our business to know who arrives in our city alone and in distress." His English was flawless, his tone gentle despite the danger radiating from him. "I'm Kang Ji-won. These are my brothers, Min Seo and Dae Yun." The younger two bowed slightly. They were both stunning in completely different ways. Min Seo had a softer elegance. Dae Yun wore glasses that somehow made him look both intellectual and lethal. "I don't need help," Victoria said automatically, even as tears threatened to spill over again. Ji-won's gaze didn't waver. "Your suitcase is broken. Your phone is dying. You have no hotel reservation and approximately $43 in your account." He paused. "You don't belong alone tonight. Come with us." Victoria's breath caught. How did he know all that? Who were these men? "I don't know you," she whispered. "No," Ji-won agreed, "but I know loss when I see it. I know pain when it's standing in front of me trying not to collapse." He extended his hand. "Come with us, Victoria James, just for tonight, just until you catch your breath." She should run. Every instinct screamed danger, but Victoria was so tired of running, so tired of being alone, so tired of pretending she could hold herself together. And there was something in his eyes, not pity, but recognition, like he understood. Against every reasonable thought, Victoria placed her broken suitcase in Min Seo's waiting hands and her trembling fingers in Ji-won's steady palm. "Just for tonight," she whispered. His grip was warm and surprisingly gentle. Just for tonight. The car was exactly what Victoria expected from men who wore suits that expensive. A black Mercedes with windows so tinted she couldn't see out. Leather seats that probably cost more than her rent. A silence that felt heavy with unspoken rules. Ji-won sat beside her in the back while Min Seo drove and Dae Yun monitored his phone in the passenger seat, occasionally murmuring in Korean. "Where are we going?" Victoria asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Somewhere safe," Ji-won replied. He hadn't let go of her hand, and strangely she didn't want him to. His thumb traced small, soothing circles on her palm. "Tell me what happened." "I don't want to talk about it." "Then don't talk, just breathe." So she did. She breathed and watched Seoul blur past through the tinted windows, neon signs in languages she couldn't read, streets filled with people who looked nothing like her, a world completely foreign and somehow exactly what she needed. "He said I wasn't presentable," Victoria heard herself say. The words tumbled out before she could stop them. "Patrick, my fiancé. Ex-fiancé. He said his career needed someone who fit, someone thin, someone white, someone who wouldn't embarrass him at company events." Ji-won's hand tightened on hers. "Continue. He invited me to the wedding, his wedding to someone else. He wanted me to see what I couldn't be." The tears came now, hot and bitter. "And I went. God, I actually went because some stupid part of me thought maybe he'd change his mind. Maybe he'd see me in the dress I bought, the makeup I spent 2 hours on, and remember that he loved me once." But he didn't. No, they laughed. They all laughed. Victoria closed her eyes. So I left. I packed a bag and bought the first international flight I could afford. I picked Seoul because I'd never been here, because no one would know me, because I could disappear. You cannot disappear, Ji-won said quietly. You are too bright for that. Victoria laughed, the sound hollow. I'm not bright. I'm just big and black and unwanted. The car went very quiet. When Victoria opened her eyes, all three men were staring at her with expressions she couldn't quite read. Forgive me, Ji-won said, his voice carrying an edge now, but your ex-fiancé is a fool, and you are extraordinary. You don't know me. I know you flew halfway around the world alone with $43 and a broken heart. I know you're still breathing despite wanting to stop. I know you're here. His dark eyes held hers. That makes you extraordinary. Victoria didn't know what to say to that, didn't know how to process kindness from a dangerous stranger when the man who claimed to love her had shattered her so completely. The car pulled up to a building that looked like something out of a luxury magazine, all glass and steel and money. Where is this? Victoria asked. Home, Ji-won said simply. Our home. For tonight, yours too. The penthouse was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the glittering Seoul skyline, minimalist furniture in shades of black and cream, art that Victoria suspected cost more than she'd make in a lifetime. Guest room is this way, Mincio said gently, carrying her pathetic suitcase down a hallway. Bathroom is stocked. Help yourself to anything. Victoria followed numbly, overwhelmed by the contrast between this sleek, expensive space and the cramped studio apartment she'd shared with Patrick, the apartment he insisted on because it built character while he saved for their future, a future that apparently didn't include her. The car pulled up to a building that looked like something out of a luxury magazine, all glass and steel and money. Where is this? Victoria asked. Home, Ji-won said simply. Our home. For tonight, yours too. The penthouse was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the glittering Seoul skyline, minimalist furniture in shades of black and cream, art that Victoria suspected cost more than she'd make in a lifetime. Guest room is this way, Mincio said gently, carrying her pathetic suitcase down a hallway. Bathroom is stocked. Help yourself to anything. Victoria followed numbly, overwhelmed by the contrast between this sleek, expensive space and the cramped studio apartment she'd shared with Patrick, the apartment he insisted on because it built character while he saved for their future, a future that apparently didn't include her. The guest room was larger than her entire studio. The bed looked like a cloud, and when she stepped into the bathroom, she found luxury toiletries, fluffy towels, and a bathtub big enough to drown in. She wanted to drown in it. Victoria! Ji-won appeared in the doorway, and she realized she'd been standing there staring at the bathtub with tears streaming down her face. When was the last time you ate? She couldn't remember. Come, dinner first, then you can sleep. I'm not hungry. You're starving. It wasn't a question. He extended his hand again. Please. This time, when Victoria took his hand, she noticed how perfectly her brown fingers contrasted against his pale skin, noticed how he didn't flinch, didn't hesitate, didn't seem to see her size or her tear-stained face or her rumpled clothes. He just saw her. The dining table was already set when they entered. Dae-hyun was plating what looked like an elaborate Korean meal, while Min-seo poured wine. I ordered from our usual place. I wasn't sure what you'd like, so I got variety. Bulgogi, bibimbap, kimchi jjigae, japchae. It's too much, Victoria whispered. It's exactly enough, Ji-won corrected, guiding her to a chair. Eat what you want, leave what you don't. They ate in comfortable silence for a while. Victoria picked at her food at first, then found herself actually tasting it, actually hungry despite everything. The flavors were bold and complex, and completely different from anything she'd had before. "This is amazing," she admitted. Mincio smiled. "Wait until you tried Daehyun's cooking. He trained in Paris. And Tokyo," added Daehyun, "and New York." Hyung insisted we all learn practical skills. "In case the family business fails?" Victoria asked without thinking, then froze. "Sorry, I shouldn't. The family business won't fail," Ji-won said calmly, "but it's useful to know how to take care of yourself and the people you care about." There was something in the way he said it that made Victoria look up, made her really look at these beautiful, dangerous men who'd taken a stranger into their home without question. "What is your family business?" she asked quietly. "Import and export, logistics, security." It was clearly a practiced answer, clearly not the whole truth. "Are you—" Victoria hesitated. "Are you dangerous?" Ji-won set down his chopsticks and met her eyes. "Yes." The honesty shocked her, "but not to you. Never to you." "Why? Why would you help me? I'm nobody." "You're not nobody." Ji-won leaned forward slightly. "You're a woman who loved someone unworthy, who had your heart broken and your confidence shattered, who still had the courage to fly across the world alone." He paused. "That's not nobody, Victoria James. That's someone remarkable." Victoria felt something crack open in her chest, some small, desperate part of her that had been screaming to be seen, to be valued, to matter. "I don't feel remarkable. I feel ruined." "Then let us help you feel otherwise." If you're loving Victoria's journey so far, show some support by hitting that like button and subscribing to Love and Tension for more intense romance stories. Drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from. We love seeing our global community come together. After dinner, they moved to the living room. Victoria curled into the corner of an impossibly soft couch, while the brothers settled around her like protective wolves. "Tell us about him," Daehyun said quietly. "The man who hurt you." Victoria didn't want to give Patrick any more power over her night, but the wine had loosened her tongue, and these strangers felt safer than anyone had in months. "We met in college," Victoria began. "I was studying social work. He was in business. He said he loved how passionate I was about helping people, how real I was compared to the sorority girls." She laughed bitterly. "I should have known. That should have been the first red flag." "What do you mean?" Mincio asked. "He loved that I was real because it made him feel noble, progressive. Dating the big black girl was his way of proving he wasn't shallow." Victoria's voice cracked. "But he was. He absolutely was. He just hid it well." Ji-won's expression had gone cold. "Continue." "Little comments at first. Maybe we should join a gym together. I saw this dress that would be really flattering on you. My boss's wife is really into health food. You two should talk." Victoria wiped her eyes. "Then bigger things. He didn't want me at company events, said I didn't understand business culture, told me to wait in the car during important dinners." "And you stayed," Daehyun said softly. Not judging, just observing. "I loved him. And he was right about some things. I didn't fit in his world. I was too loud, too black, too fat. His colleagues would look at me like they were trying to figure out what he saw in me." "They should have been trying to figure out what you saw in him," Ji-won said sharply. Victoria looked at him, startled by the anger in his voice. "You gave him everything. Your love, your time, your confidence, and he took it all and threw it back in your face because he was too weak to stand beside you, too cowardly to defend you, too shallow to see what he had. He wasn't always—" "Yes, he was." Ji-won moved closer, his intensity pinning her in place. "Men like that don't change, Victoria. They wear masks. They pretend, but underneath, they're always exactly who they show themselves to be in the end. The truth of it hit her like a wave. All those little moments, all those small cruelties disguised as concern. Patrick had been showing her who he was all along. She'd just been too in love to see it. "I'm so stupid," Victoria whispered. "No." Jiwon reached out and tilted her chin up gently, forcing her to meet his eyes. "You're human. You loved someone who didn't deserve it. That doesn't make you stupid. It makes you capable of love. And that's a gift, not a weakness." Victoria stared at him, at this dangerous man with gentle hands and fierce eyes, and felt something shift in her chest, something that had been frozen since this morning began to thaw. "Why are you being so kind to me?" she asked. Jiwon's thumb brushed across her cheek, wiping away a tear. "Because someone should have been kind to you long before tonight. Because you deserve better than what you've been given. Because..." He paused, something vulnerable flickering in his eyes. "Because I recognize pain when I see it. You've been hurt too," Victoria realized. "Everyone's been hurt." Jiwon's hand dropped away. "The question is what you do with the pain. Let it destroy you or let it make you stronger. I don't feel strong. You will." He stood, extending his hand once more. "But first, you need to rest. Tomorrow we'll figure out what comes next." Victoria took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. Let him guide her back to the guest room. Let Min Seo press a glass of water and some aspirin into her hand with a knowing smile. Let Dae Hyun remind her that breakfast would be at 9 and she should sleep as late as she needed. Let herself, for the first time in longer than she can remember, feel safe. Victoria woke to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows and the smell of coffee. For one blissful moment, she didn't remember where she was, or why. Didn't remember Patrick, or the wedding, or the humiliation. Then it all came crashing back. She grabbed her phone, someone had plugged it in to charge overnight, and immediately wished she hadn't. Notifications flooded the screen. Messages from friends asking where she was. Emails from the wedding coordinator asking about gift returns. And worst of all, tagged photos from Patrick's wedding that people kept sending her with messages like, "Thinking of you today," and "His loss." Right, as if she was supposed to feel empowered by being replaced. Victoria was about to throw her phone across the room when a knock knocked on the door. "Come in," she called, hastily wiping her eyes. Jiwon entered carrying a tray. Fresh fruit, coffee, pastries that looked like art. He'd changed from last night's suit into dark jeans and a simple black t-shirt that somehow made him look even more dangerous. "Good morning," he said, setting the tray on the bedside table. "Dae-hyun insists you need to eat before the day begins." "What time is it?" "Nearly noon. We let you sleep." Noon. She'd slept for over 12 hours. Victoria couldn't remember the last time she'd slept past 7. "I should go," she said automatically. "I've imposed enough." "You haven't imposed at all." Jiwon sat on the edge of the bed, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and woody. "And you have nowhere to go." The brutal truth of that statement stung. "I'll figure something out. Find a hostel or..." "Victoria," Jiwon's voice was gentle but firm. "Look at me." She did. "You flew here to escape. You have no job, no apartment, no plan. Your bank account has $43. He paused. "What exactly are you going to figure out in the next few hours?" Victoria's throat tightened. "I don't know, but I can't just stay here. I can't be a charity case." "You're not charity." Jiwon leaned closer. "You're someone who needs help. There's a difference." "Why do you care?" the question burst out of her. "I'm nothing to you, a stranger who cried at an airport. Why would you..." "Because 3 years ago," Jiwon interrupted quietly, "someone helped me when I had nothing, when I'd lost everything that mattered and wanted to disappear." His jaw tightened. "They saved my life. and I swore that if I ever had the chance to do the same for someone else, I would. Victoria stared at him, seeing the pain beneath his controlled exterior for the first time. "What happened to you?" she whispered. "That's a story for another day." Ji-won stood. "Right now, eat. Then shower. Then we'll talk about what comes next." "What does come next?" He paused at the door, looking back at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "It depends on what you want, Victoria James. Do you want to run back to Boston and pick up the pieces, or do you want to stay and build something new?" "I don't know," admitted Victoria. "Then stay until you figure it out." Ji-won's smile was small but genuine. "We have plenty of room, and I think you might be surprised by what you find here." After showering and dressing in the clean clothes someone had left folded outside her door, her own clothes, washed and pressed, Victoria found the brothers in what appeared to be a home office. All three looked up when she entered, and she fought the urge to turn around and hide. "Victoria," Ji-won gestured to an empty chair. "Perfect timing. We have a proposition for you." "A proposition?" "More of an opportunity," Dae-hyun clarified, closing his laptop. "If you're interested." Victoria sat slowly, her heart hammering. "I'm listening." Ji-won exchanged glances with his brothers, then focused on her. "We own several businesses in Seoul. Legitimate businesses," he added, as if reading her thoughts. "Restaurants, hotels, a security consulting firm. We need someone to help with community outreach and client relations." "You want to hire me?" "We want to offer you a job," Min-soo corrected gently. "A real job, with a real salary. You'd work with our international clients, help them navigate Korean business culture, coordinate events." "I don't speak Korean," Victoria said automatically. "You'll learn," Ji-won replied. "We have language tutors, and many of our international clients prefer working with English speakers anyway." It sounded too good to be true. "Why me? I have no experience with—" "You have a degree in social work," Dae-hyun interrupted, "which means you understand people. You know how to build relationships, navigate difficult situations, read emotional dynamics. That's exactly what we need." "And honestly," Ji-won leaned forward, "we need someone genuine, someone who hasn't been corrupted by the business world, someone who cares about people more than profit." Victoria looked between the three of them, searching for the catch. "What's the salary?" When Dae-hyun named the figure, Victoria nearly fell out of her chair. It was more than she'd made in Boston, more than she'd ever made. That's too much." "It's standard for the position," Ji-won said calmly, "plus housing allowance since you'd be relocating." "Relocating? To Seoul? Unless you'd prefer to commute from Boston," Min-seo said with a slight smile. Victoria's mind was racing. This was insane. She'd been in Seoul for less than 24 hours. She knew nothing about these men except that they were dangerous and kind and looking at her like she mattered. "I need time to think," she said finally. "Take all the time you need," Ji-won agreed. "You can stay here while you decide. No pressure, no expectations. And if I say no, then we'll help you get back to Boston," Min-seo said simply. "Buy your ticket, make sure you're settled. No hard feelings." It was the lack of pressure that decided her. The fact that they were offering her a choice instead of trying to manipulate or control her. The fact that they saw her as someone worth investing in. "Can I see where I'd be working?" Victoria asked. Ji-won's smile was answer enough. The restaurant was called Seonwa, and it was stunning. Traditional Korean architecture blended with modern design. Private dining rooms with low tables and silk cushions. A main dining area that could seat 200, and a staff that clearly respected or feared the Kang brothers. "We opened this 5 years ago," Ji-won explained as they walked through the kitchen. "After our father died and left us his various businesses. Most of them were less legitimate. We've been working to transition everything into legal enterprises. The old guard doesn't always appreciate the changes, which is why security is so important. I'm starting to understand. Your family was..." Involved in organized crime, yes, Ji-won said bluntly. We're trying to change that, build something legitimate that we can be proud of. It's not easy, Min-seo admitted. Respect in our world isn't given, it's taken, and we're trying to take it differently than our father did. They showed her the hotel next, a boutique property in Gangnam with a rooftop bar that offered views of the entire city. Then the security consulting firm where serious-looking men in suits monitored screens showing various properties. You protect all this yourselves? Victoria asked. We protect what's ours and the people who work for us. Loyalty is everything in our world. By the time they returned to the penthouse, Victoria's head was spinning. These weren't just successful businessmen. They were rebuilding an empire from the ground up, trying to leave behind a violent legacy while maintaining the respect and fear that came with their family name. I still don't understand why you want me, Victoria said as they sat in the living room with tea. You have everything to offer, Ji-won countered. You're American, which gives you automatic credibility with our Western clients. You're educated, you're genuine, and you understand what it's like to be underestimated. That last part hit home. People will underestimate you because of your size, because of your race, because you're a woman in a male-dominated business culture. But that's their weakness, not yours. You can use it. Use it how? By exceeding every expectation. By being so good at what you do that they have to respect you despite their prejudices. Ji-won's eyes held hers. By proving them wrong every single day. Victoria felt tears threatening again. You make it sound easy. It won't be easy. It'll be hard. There will be days you want to quit, days you want to run back to what's familiar. Ji-won leaned forward. But I think you're done running, Victoria James. I think you're ready to fight. He was right. God help her, he was right. I'll do it, she said quietly. I'll take the job. Min-seo whooped. Dae-yoon smiled. And Ji-won looked at her like she'd just given him something precious. Welcome to Seoul, he said softly. Welcome home. The next 3 months were a whirlwind. Victoria found an apartment, small but modern, in a building the brothers owned, so the rent was negotiable, which meant significantly less than market rate despite her protests. She started Korean lessons with a tutor who came 3 times a week and was endlessly patient with her terrible pronunciation. And she started working. The job was exactly what they'd promised: challenging, engaging, never boring. She coordinated events for international clients, helped navigate cultural differences, smoothed over misunderstandings. She learned quickly that her natural empathy was her greatest asset. She could read a room, sense tension, find common ground between people who seemed to have nothing in common. She was good at it, really good. Another successful dinner, Dae-hyun said one night after a particularly difficult client meeting that Victoria had somehow salvaged. The chairman actually smiled. I didn't think he was capable. Victoria laughed, riding the high of professional success. He just needed someone to listen to his concerns instead of dismissing them. See? Ji-won appeared beside her, his hand briefly touching her lower back in a gesture that had become familiar over the months. What did I tell you? You're a natural. The touches had started innocently enough. A hand on her shoulder, fingers brushing hers when he handed her documents, standing just a little too close when they reviewed seating charts for events. Victoria told herself it meant nothing, that Ji-won was naturally protective and physical with people he cared about, that she was reading too much into every lingering glance, every soft smile, every time he found reasons to work late when she was still in the office. She told herself this even as her heart beat faster every time he entered a room, even as she found herself dressing more carefully on days she knew she'd see him, even as she fell asleep thinking about the way he'd looked at her during meetings, proud, possessive, like she was something precious. Victoria, Min-seo's voice pulled her from her thoughts. Did you hear the question? She blinked, realizing she'd been staring at Jiwon. Sorry, what? I asked if you had plans for Saturday, Mincio repeated with a knowing smile. There's a charity gala. Hyun needs a date. Victoria's heart stopped. A date? A companion, Jiwon corrected, shooting his brother a look. Someone to help navigate the evening. Many of the guests will be international clients. So, not a date, just work, obviously. Of course, Victoria said, ignoring the disappointment in her chest. What's the dress code? Formal. We'll send a stylist to your apartment Friday afternoon. Jiwon paused. Is that acceptable? You don't have to do that. I can find something to wear. I insist. His tone left no room for argument. This is a work event. Consider it part of your wardrobe allowance. Victoria wanted to argue, but she'd learned that Jiwon was immovable when he made decisions. And honestly, the thought of having a professionally styled outfit for a fancy gala was exciting. She'd never been to a fancy gala. Patrick had never taken her to his company events. Thank you, she said quietly. Jiwon's expression softened. You're welcome. The stylist arrived Friday with 3 racks of dresses. 3 full racks. Victoria stared at them in shock. Mr. Kong said to give you options, the stylist said. A tiny woman named Hana with impeccable taste. We can try everything until we find the perfect one. Perfect turned out to be a deep emerald green gown that hugged her curves like it was made for her. The neckline was elegant without being too revealing, the fabric rich and luxurious. When she looked in the mirror, Victoria barely recognized herself. She looked sophisticated, powerful, beautiful. Mr. Kong has excellent taste, Hana said with a knowing smile. This one was his first choice. Jiwon picked this? He picked all of them, said the color would complement your skin tone. Hana began pinning Victoria's hair into an elegant updo. He was very specific about what he wanted. Victoria's heart was doing dangerous things. It's just a work event. Hana's smile said she didn't believe that for a second. Saturday evening, Victoria was ready an hour early, too nervous to sit still. When the car arrived to take her to the brothers' penthouse, she almost told the driver to turn around. But then she thought about Patrick. How he'd hidden her away, embarrassed by her presence. How he said she wasn't presentable. She thought about Jiwon's words. You'll prove them wrong every single day. So she got in the car. The penthouse was chaos when she arrived. Mincio was arguing with his stylist about if his tie was too adventurous. It was purple silk with subtle embroidery. Daehyun was on the phone coordinating security. And Jiwon? Jiwon stood by the window in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, and Victoria forgot how to breathe. He turned when she entered, and whatever he'd been about to say died on his lips. The room went quiet. Victoria, he finally said, his voice rough. You look presentable, she offered with a shaky smile. Devastating. He crossed to her in 3 strides, his eyes never leaving hers. Absolutely devastating. The way he looked at her, like she was the only person in the room, in the world, made Victoria's knees weak. The dress is beautiful, she managed. The dress is fabric. You're what makes it beautiful. His hand lifted, hesitated, then gently touched the delicate strap on her shoulder. Green was the right choice. You picked it, Victoria whispered. I know. His thumb traced the line of her collarbone, feather light. I wanted you to see yourself the way I see you. And how's that? Extraordinary. Minso cleared his throat loudly. Hyung, if you're done making everyone uncomfortable with the intensity... Jiwon stepped back, and Victoria immediately missed his proximity, missed the heat of him, missed feeling just for a moment like she was the center of someone's universe. We should go, Jiwon said, his tone professional again, but his eyes stayed on Victoria. The gala was being held at one of Seoul's most exclusive hotels, ironically, one the brothers didn't own. The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and designer gowns. Women who looked like models mingled with men in tuxedos worth more than cars. Victoria felt every eye turn toward them when they entered, felt the assessment, the judgment, the curiosity about the plus-sized black woman on Kang Ji-won's arm. Her instinct was to shrink, to apologize for taking up space. But then Ji-won's hand settled on her lower back, warm and possessive, and he leaned close enough for her to smell his cologne. "Head up," he murmured. "You belong here more than any of them." So Victoria lifted her chin and walked into that ballroom like she owned it. The evening was a blur of introductions, clients who wanted to discuss business, competitors who wanted to assess the brothers' latest venture, socialites who wanted to be seen talking to the infamous Kang family. And through that all, Ji-won never left her side. His hand stayed on her back, her waist, her arm, a constant reminder that she wasn't alone in this. "Mr. Kang," a woman approached, blonde and elegant in a white gown that probably cost a small fortune. "I haven't seen you at one of these events in ages, and with such interesting company." The word interesting dripped with condescension. Victoria felt herself tensing, but Ji-won's hand squeezed gently. "Mrs. Whittemore, allow me to introduce Victoria James, our Director of International Relations." His tone was perfectly polite, but there was steel underneath. "Victoria, Mrs. Whittemore runs a charity foundation that occasionally partners with our hotels." "How lovely," Mrs. Whittemore said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "International relations. I didn't realize the Kang family was expanding into diverse markets." The racism wasn't even subtle. "We've always valued diversity," Victoria replied smoothly, channeling every ounce of professionalism she'd learned. "It's good business to understand multiple perspectives. I'm sure your foundation benefits from the same approach." Mrs. Whittemore's smile tightened. "Of course, though I find that some perspectives are more valuable than others in certain contexts." "How fascinating," Ji-won said, his voice glacial now. "I find that the perspectives often dismissed as less valuable are the ones that drive real innovation, which is why Victoria has been instrumental in securing 3 major contracts this quarter alone. But please, do tell us more about your foundation's work. I'm sure it's very traditional." The dismissal was clear. Mrs. Whittemore's face flushed, and she excused herself quickly. Victoria let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" Ji-won's expression was dark. "That woman is a bigot, hiding behind expensive clothes and charity work. You don't thank me for basic human dignity. Most people don't even offer basic human dignity." He turned to face her fully, his eyes intense. "Then you've been surrounded by the wrong people." Before Victoria could respond, Dae-hoon appeared with champagne. "2 potential clients at 3 o'clock. They've been asking about our expansion in Japan." And they were back to work. But Victoria caught herself smiling, caught herself feeling, for the first time in her life, like she was exactly where she belonged. 2 hours into the event, Victoria excused herself to use the restroom. She needed a moment to breathe, to process the overwhelming evening. The bathroom was thankfully empty. Victoria leaned against the marble counter, staring at her reflection. Her makeup was perfect. Her hair was perfect. The dress was perfect. She looked perfect. So why did she still feel like an imposter? "You clean up well for someone who doesn't belong." Victoria spun around. 3 women had entered, all thin, all white, all looking at her with barely concealed disdain. "Excuse me?" Kang Ji-won. The speaker was a redhead in a dress that was more underwear than clothing. "Everyone's wondering how you managed to get your hooks into him. What's your secret? Playing the diversity card?" Victoria's hands clenched on the counter. "I work for him. That's it." "Sure," another woman, a brunette, laughed. "And I'm sure your body type has nothing to do with whatever fetish he's working through." The words hit like physical blows. All the old insecurities came flooding back. Too big, too black, too different. Not enough. You should know, the redhead continued, stepping closer. Ji-won goes through phases. Last year, it was the French model. Year before that, the heiress from Japan. He'll get bored of you, too. Maybe faster since you're so... She gestured vaguely at Victoria's body. Unconventional. Victoria wanted to run, wanted to cry, wanted to disappear. Instead, she thought about the past 3 months, about learning Korean and exceeding expectations and proving people wrong every single day. About Ji-won calling her extraordinary. "You're right," Victoria said quietly. "I am unconventional. I'm not stick-thin or generically pretty or whatever else you think he should want. But you know what? He chose me to work for him. He chose me to attend this event, and he chooses to spend time with me every single day." She stood straighter. "So maybe the question isn't what he sees in me. Maybe it's what he doesn't see in you." The women's faces went scarlet. "How dare you?" "Victoria?" Everyone turned. Ji-won stood in the doorway of the women's bathroom, his expression unreadable. "I've been looking for you," he said calmly. "The Tokyo investors would like to discuss expansion plans." He extended his hand, and Victoria took it gratefully, letting him pull her past the shocked women. They didn't speak until they reached a quiet hallway away from the ballroom. "How much did you hear?" Victoria asked. "Enough." Ji-won's jaw was tight. "I'm sorry." "For what? You didn't say those things." "I brought you here knowing this might happen." His hand cupped her cheek gently. "I should have prepared you better. You can't prepare someone for casual cruelty." Victoria closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. I thought maybe I was past letting it hurt." "It always hurts when people judge you for things you can't control." Ji-won's voice was soft. "But you handled it perfectly. Do you know what I would have done in that situation at your age?" "What?" "Destroyed them. Financially, socially, completely. I had no restraint, no mercy." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "You showed them dignity they didn't deserve. That's strength, Victoria. Real strength." She opened her eyes to find him looking at her with something that made her heart race, something that looked dangerously close to... "Mr. Kang?" A staff member rushed over. "There's been an incident with one of the guests." Ji-won's hand dropped immediately, his expression shifting back to business. "What kind of incident?" "Security is handling it, but they wanted your input." "I'll be right there." He turned back to Victoria. "Will you be okay for a few minutes?" She nodded, even though she wanted to beg him not to leave. "Stay here," he said firmly. "I'll send Min-soo to..." "I'm fine, Ji-won. Go handle your business." He hesitated, then pressed a quick kiss to her forehead that left her breathless. Then, he was gone. Loving the story so far? Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for love and tension, and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Your support keeps these stories coming. Victoria returned to the ballroom, determined to prove she was fine. She mingled with guests, discussed business opportunities, smiled until her face hurt. But her mind kept drifting back to that moment in the hallway, the way Ji-won had touched her, the way he'd looked at her, the kiss on her forehead that felt like a promise of something more. She was falling for him, had been falling for him since that first night at the airport, maybe even before, in the liminal space between heartbreak and hope, and that terrified her. Because men like Ji-won didn't fall for women like Victoria. They rescued them, employed them, protected them, but they didn't love them. Not really, not in the way that mattered. Patrick had taught her that lesson well. Victoria James. She turned to find an older Korean man studying her with sharp, calculating eyes. "Mr. Choi," she said, recognizing one of the brothers' business rivals. "It's nice to meet you." "Is it?" His smile didn't reach his eyes. I've been hearing interesting things about you. Kang Ji-won's new employee. The pause before employee was deliberate. I'm the Director of International Relations for Kang Enterprises, Victoria replied evenly. Of course you are. Mr. Choi stepped closer, and Victoria fought the urge to back away. Tell me, how does a woman with no experience in our industry land such a prestigious position? Must be exhausting, working so hard to prove yourself. Or perhaps you're proving yourself in other ways. The implication was clear and disgusting. I think this conversation is over, Victoria said coldly. I don't think so. His hand shot out, gripping her wrist. Let me go. Come now, don't be... She said, let her go. Ji-won's voice was quiet, deadly quiet. Mr. Choi released Victoria's wrist immediately, stumbling back. Kang, I was just having a friendly conversation with your employee. There's nothing friendly about touching someone without their consent. Ji-won moved between them, his body a wall of protection. Leave now, before I forget we're in public. You can't threaten me, boy. Your father and I... My father is dead, and I am not him. Ji-won's voice dropped even lower. You have 3 seconds to leave before I have you removed. 1. Mr. Choi's face went pale. He glanced at Victoria once more, then hurried away. Ji-won immediately turned to Victoria, his hands hovering near her shoulders but not quite touching. Are you all right? Did he hurt you? I'm fine, just shaken. Victoria looked down at her wrist, which was already showing red marks. Ji-won's expression went absolutely murderous. He lifted her wrist gently, his thumb brushing the marks. I'm going to destroy him. Ji-won, he touched you. He proposed you like you were... He couldn't even finish the sentence. I'm going to destroy you, Victoria. Please don't. She caught his hand, stopping him. He's not worth it. He's just a pathetic old man who thinks he can treat women like property. And I won't let anyone treat you like that. Not while you're under my protection. Is that what I am? Someone under your protection? Your employee? Your... What exactly, Ji-won? He stared at her, and she saw the moment he understood what she was really asking. Victoria. No, I need to know. Tears were threatening, and she hated herself for it. Because 3 months ago, you found me at an airport and called me extraordinary. You gave me a job and an apartment and a whole new life. You touch me like I matter, and look at me like I'm... She stopped, swallowing hard. Like I'm something special. But then people like Mr. Choi and those women in the bathroom assume I'm just another conquest, another phase, and I need to know which one is true. The ballroom seemed to fade away. Nothing existed except Victoria and Ji-won and the question hanging between them. You're right, Ji-won said finally. I haven't been fair to you. Victoria's heart sunk. I see. No, you don't. He stepped closer, his eyes intense. I haven't been fair because I've been lying to myself, telling myself I was just helping you, just being a good employer, just protecting someone who needed it. His hand cupped her face. But the truth is, I've been falling for you since the moment I saw you struggling with that broken suitcase. Victoria's breath stopped. I fell for your strength, Ji-won continued. Your resilience, the way you refused to let the world break you, even when it tried its hardest. I fell for your kindness and your laugh, and the way you treat everyone with dignity, even when they don't deserve it. His thumb traced her lips. I fell for you, Victoria James, all of you, and that terrified me because the last time I cared about someone, I lost them, and I couldn't bear the thought of losing you too. Ji-won, I know I have no right to feel this way. You came here broken, and I was supposed to help you heal, not fall in love with you. But I did. I have, and I can't pretend anymore. Love. He said love. Say something, Ji-won whispered. Please. Victoria laughed, the sound somewhere between joy and disbelief. I thought you just saw me as a charity case, someone to rescue and protect and eventually send on their way. Never. You were never that. Then what am I? Everything. The word came out fierce, certain. You're everything, Victoria. And then he was kissing her, right there in the hallway of the most exclusive hotel in Seoul, with dozens of people potentially watching. Kang Ji-won was kissing her like she was his last breath. Victoria kissed him back like she was drowning and he was air. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ji-won rested his forehead against hers. Leave with me. Right now, let's go home. What about the gala? I don't care about the gala. I care about you. So they left. Let Min-seo and Dae-hyun handle the rest of the evening. Let the gossips whisper about the scene they'd caused. Let the whole world talk. Because for the first time in her life, Victoria James felt like someone's first choice. And it was glorious. The weeks that followed were a revelation. Ji-won courted her properly. Dinner dates at restaurants where he'd reserved the entire space just for them. Walks through Seoul's parks where cherry blossoms were just beginning to bloom. Quiet evenings in the penthouse where they talked until dawn about everything and nothing. He introduced her to his world slowly, carefully, showed her the parts of Korean culture he loved, taught her about his family's complicated history, shared the scars, physical and emotional, that he usually kept hidden. My father was a violent man, Ji-won told her one night as they sat on his balcony overlooking the city. His empire was built through fear and pain. When he died, I inherited not just his businesses, but his enemies, his debts, his reputation. That's not who you are, Victoria said softly. Isn't it? He turned to look at her, vulnerability clear in his eyes. I've done terrible things, Victoria. Things I'm not proud of. Things that haunt me. We all have things we're not proud of, Victoria said, taking his hand. I stayed with a man who treated me like garbage for 3 years because I was too afraid to be alone. I let him convince me I was worthless. That's my shame. That's not shame. That's survival. So is what you did. Victoria moved closer. You survived a violent father and a dangerous world and came out the other side trying to build something better. That's not shameful, Ji-won. That's heroic. He pulled her into his arms, holding her like she was something precious. How did I get so lucky? Luck had nothing to do with it. You chose me, and I chose you. They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped in each other and the Seoul night, while the city sparkled below them like fallen stars. It happened on a Tuesday. Victoria was in the office reviewing contracts when her phone buzzed with a notification she'd been dreading for months. Patrick Marcus has tagged you in a post. Her hands shook as she opened social media, and there it was, a photo from his honeymoon. Him and Amanda on a beach, golden and perfect, and the caption, sometimes you have to kiss a few frogs before you find your princess. So grateful I found mine. Hashtag blessed. Hashtag new beginnings. The comments were a mix of congratulations and thinly veiled digs at Victoria. People she'd thought were friends piling on the narrative that Patrick had upgraded. Victoria stared at the post, waiting for the pain to come, waiting for the humiliation and heartbreak to crush her, but it didn't. Because looking at Patrick's smug face, she didn't see the man she'd loved. She saw a small, petty person who needed to put others down to feel important. She saw someone who would never be happy, because happiness requires depth, and Patrick was shallow as a puddle. And she felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a distant pity for Amanda, who didn't yet know what she'd signed up for. Victoria? Jiwon appeared in her doorway, concern immediate on his face. What's wrong? She showed him the post. His expression went cold. Want me to destroy him? I can have his company bankrupt by Friday. Victoria laughed. Actually laughed. No, I want you to come here and kiss me until I forget he ever existed. Jiwon's eyes warmed. That I can do. And he did. He kissed her until the phone fell from her hands, kissed her until the office door clicked shut and the world narrowed to just the two of them, kissed her until Patrick Marcus was less than a memory, just background noise in a life that had become extraordinary. When they finally broke apart, Victoria was breathless and grinning. Feel better? Jiwon asked. So much better. Good. He pulled her close, his arms wrapped securely around her. Because you deserve better than letting that fool take up space in your mind. You deserve everything, Victoria, and I plan to spend a very long time proving that to you. A very long time? Victoria's heart skipped. How long are we talking? Jiwon's smile was slow and devastating. How does forever sound? Like a good start. 6 months after that night at the airport, Jiwon took Victoria back to Incheon. Why are we at the airport? She asked, confused. Because this is where it started. He led her to the exact spot where he'd first seen her, where she'd been broken and alone and struggling. I want you to see how far you've come. Victoria looked around at the bustling terminal. 6 months ago, she'd been here with nothing. Now she had a career she loved, friends she trusted, a city that felt like home. And she had Jiwon. Victoria James. He turned her to face him, and she was startled to see vulnerability in his eyes. 6 months ago, I saw a woman who was trying not to collapse under the weight of her pain. I saw someone who deserved better than what life had given her, and I thought maybe, if I was lucky, I could help her find her way. You did, Victoria whispered. No, you found your own way. I just walked beside you. And somewhere along that walk, you became the most important person in my world. You taught me that strength isn't about violence or power. It's about resilience, kindness, the courage to keep going even when everything hurts. Tears were streaming down Victoria's face now. You mended more than hearts in my family, Victoria. You mended me. Made me believe I could be better than my father. Made me want to build something worth passing on to the future. He pulled a small box from his pocket, and Victoria's breath caught. I'm not asking you to marry me. Not yet. Not until you're absolutely ready. But I am asking you to be my partner. In life, in business, in everything. I'm asking you to build this future with me. Inside the box was a ring. Not an engagement ring, but a promise ring, a band of white gold with a single emerald. The color that looks best on you, Jiwon said softly. The color I fell in love with you in. Yes, Victoria managed through her tears. Yes to all of it. Yes to partnership and future and building something beautiful together. He slipped the ring on her finger and pulled her into a kiss that felt like coming home. Around them, travelers stopped to watch. Some smiled, some took photos, some probably judged. Victoria didn't care, because she'd flown to Seoul broken and alone, thinking distance would save her, and instead she'd found something she'd never had before. She'd found herself, and in finding herself, she'd found love. Real love, the kind that saw her for who she was, all her curves and scars and imperfections, and called her extraordinary. The kind of love that didn't ask her to shrink or change or apologize for taking up space. The kind of love that said, you belong exactly as you are. Victoria stood in front of the mirror in the guest room, the same room where she'd slept that first night, broken and scared, and certain she'd never feel whole again. Now, a year later, she barely recognized the woman looking back at her. She'd cut her hair into a natural tapered style that framed her face beautifully. She wore a custom-made dress in deep emerald green, her color, as Jiwon always said, that celebrated every curve of her body. Her makeup was flawless, but it was her smile that made her beautiful. The genuine, joyful smile of someone who'd found her place in the world. Ready? Mincio poked his head in. Over the past year, the brothers had become the family she'd never really had. Protective, annoying, loving in their own complicated ways. Almost, Victoria touched the ring on her left hand, no longer a promise, but a commitment. She and Ji-won had married quietly 3 months ago, in a small ceremony with just family and close friends. No fanfare, no spectacle, just love. Today was different. Today was the grand opening of their newest venture, a community center in one of Seoul's underserved neighborhoods, a place that offered job training, language classes, counseling services, everything Victoria had dreamed of doing with her social work degree, but had never had the resources to accomplish. Until now. The crowd's huge, Mincio reported. International press, local officials, about 100 community members, and Ji-won's about to pace a hole in the floor if you don't come out soon. Victoria laughed. Can't have that. She found Ji-won backstage, reviewing his speech notes for the 10th time. He looked up when she entered, and his expression melted into something soft and warm. Hi, he said simply. Hi yourself. She straightened his tie, even though it was already perfect. Nervous? Terrified. What if no one comes? What if we built this whole thing and Mincio says there are 100 people already here? We're going to have to turn people away. Ji-won's shoulders relaxed. Really? Really? Victoria cupped his face. You're changing lives, Ji-won. Our lives. That's worth being proud of. We're changing lives, Ji-won corrected. This was your dream. I just helped make it happen. No, you believed in it. In me. That made all the difference. They stood there for a moment, foreheads pressed together, breathing in sync. Then Dae-yoon's voice crackled over the radio. You're on in 2 minutes. Ji-won took Victoria's hand. Ready to change the world, Mrs. Kang? She'd kept her last name professionally, but had taken his in private, a compromise they'd both been happy with. Victoria James Kang, a bridge between who she'd been and who she'd become. Ready, she said. They walked onto the stage together, hand in hand, to thunderous applause. Victoria looked out at the crowd, faces of every age and background, all here because they believed in second chances, in new beginnings, in the possibility of transformation. She thought about herself a year ago, broken, humiliated, convinced she was unlovable. She thought about Patrick, who'd said she wasn't presentable, and she smiled. Because she'd become more than presentable. She'd become powerful, successful, happy. She'd become exactly who she was always meant to be. As Ji-won gave his speech about community and hope and building something that lasted, Victoria felt his thumb trace circles on her palm, felt the weight of her ring, felt the absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. After the ceremony, as they toured the facility with community members and press, an older Korean woman approached Victoria with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," the woman said in halting English. "My daughter, she struggles, being different. This place, hope for her." Victoria knelt down, taking the woman's hands. "Tell your daughter that being different isn't a weakness, it's a superpower, and she's not alone." As the woman walked away wiping tears, Ji-won pulled Victoria close. "You know what I love most about you?" "What?" "You took your pain and turned it into purpose. You took the worst thing that ever happened to you and used it to help others. That's not just extraordinary, Victoria. That's heroic." She turned in his arms, looking up at this man who'd found her at her lowest and seen her at her highest and loved her through everything in between. "Wanna know a secret?" she whispered. "Always. That morning in Boston, when Patrick humiliated me, when I was standing outside that wedding hall feeling like my life was over," Victoria smiled. "That was the best thing that ever happened to me, because it brought me here, to you, to this life, to becoming who I was always meant to be." Jiwon's kiss was soft and sweet and full of promise. "Want to know my secret?" he asked when they broke apart. "Tell me." "The moment I saw you at that airport, struggling with your broken suitcase and trying not to cry, I knew my life was about to change. I just didn't know how much." His eyes held hers. "You saved me too, Victoria. From becoming my father, from believing I had to be hard and cold and violent to survive. You taught me that strength comes from kindness, that power comes from lifting others up, that love is the bravest thing we can do." Around them, the community center buzzed with life and hope and possibility. Children laughed in the play area, adults enrolled in classes, families found resources they desperately needed. And in the middle of it all stood Victoria and Jiwon, hand in hand, watching the dream they'd built together come to life. Later that night, they walked through Seoul's streets, cherry blossoms falling around them like snow. The city lights glowed warm and welcoming. Somewhere in the distance, music played. "Happy?" Jiwon asked. Victoria thought about the question, thought about the journey from Boston to Seoul, from broken to whole, from invisible to extraordinary. "So happy," she said. And as they walked hand in hand through the city that had become home, surrounded by falling petals and city lights and endless possibility, Victoria James Kang smiled, because she'd learned the most important lesson of all. Love doesn't ask you to change, it asks you to bloom. And she had bloomed brilliantly.